Little boy walked into the Millionaire CEO's office with resume and one sentence that made him cry. Welcome to Soul Thread Stories by T. Before we begin, drop your location and the time you're watching in the comments. Now let's dive into today's powerful story. The oak door to Sebastian Crowell's executive suite swung open. The receptionist's protest faded as 12-year-old Caleb Adams stood there, small and determined, clutching a wrinkled piece of paper. Sir, I'm sorry, The receptionist began. Crowell, the 52-year-old CEO of a billion-dollar empire, raised his hand to silence her. His cold gaze traveled from Caleb's worn sneakers to his threadbare jacket. You have 30 seconds, Crowell said, his voice cutting through the tension. Caleb stepped forward, his chin raised despite his trembling hands. The contrast was striking. A boy from the poorest neighborhood standing before floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city he barely recognized from below. My name is Caleb Adams. This is my resume. He placed a handwritten paper on the polished mahogany desk. Crowell glanced at it. Garden work, newspaper delivery, babysitting, all written in careful, childish handwriting. I need a job, Caleb continued, his voice steady despite everything. And I know you don't hire children. Crowell's eyebrow arched. Then why waste my time? That's when Caleb spoke the words that would change everything. I may be young, but every day I work to save the only family I have. And sometimes that means saving the very hope that keeps us alive. Something in Crowell's expression fractured. His hand, reaching to dismiss the boy, froze midair. For the first time in 15 years, tears welled in the millionaire's eyes. What led this desperate child to seek out one of the most powerful men in the city? What memories did those simple words unlock in a man known for his ruthless business tactics? And why would a single sentence from a boy's lips shatter the carefully constructed walls around a millionaire's heart? The tears in Crowell's eyes seemed to surprise him as much as they did Caleb. The CEO quickly turned toward the window, one hand gripping the edge of his desk. Who sent you here? Crowell asked, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. Nobody, Caleb replied. I came on my own. Crowell turned back, studying the boy with renewed interest. Sit down, he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. 3 months earlier, Caleb had been a different child altogether. His mornings began at 4:30 a.m., not because of ambition, but necessity. Their apartment on Westfield Avenue was barely an apartment at all, just 2 rooms with peeling paint and windows that rattled when trains passed on the elevated tracks outside. Caleb, Marina's voice called weakly from behind the curtain that separated their sleeping areas. Is that you up already? Go back to sleep, Mom, Caleb whispered, filling a glass with tap water and counting out pills from 5 different orange bottles. The doctor had said the stage 3 lymphoma was responding to treatment, but the medical bills had already emptied their bank account twice over. Marina's once vibrant face was now hollow-cheeked and pale, her eyes sunken but still determined. When she smiled, Caleb could still see traces of the woman who had once danced with him in their kitchen while making Sunday pancakes. Your lunch is in the fridge, she said, swallowing the pills with practiced efficiency. And Zara's too. I already got it, Caleb replied, showing her the 2 paper bags he'd prepared the night before. Mrs. Diaz is coming at 8 to stay with you. Marina's eyes clouded with guilt. I should be the one taking care of you both. Caleb squeezed her hand. You will again, once you're better. He left the words, if you get better, unspoken. In the corner of the room, 7-year-old Zara slept curled around her stuffed rabbit, its fur worn thin from years of love. Her math homework lay half-finished on the floor, beside a drawing of what appeared to be their family standing in front of a house with garden, a house that existed only in her imagination. By 5:15 a.m., Caleb was out the door and heading toward Mr. Garcia's convenience store, where he stocked shelves before school. The old man paid him under the table. Not much, but enough to keep the lights on for another month. You're late, Mr. Garcia grumbled when Caleb arrived, though both knew he was precisely on time. Sorry, sir, Caleb replied automatically, reaching for his apron. Mr. Garcia's stern expression softened. Your mother had another bad night. Caleb nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Last night's fever had spiked to 103, and he'd spent hours applying cold compresses to Marina's forehead while Zara slept unaware. There's a sandwich in the back for you, Mr. Garcia said, turning away quickly as if embarrassed by his own kindness. After school, while other children played video games or attended sports practice, Caleb hurried to the Willows retirement community, where he read to elderly residents for $7 an hour. Mrs. Abernathy, with her cloudy eyes and trembling hands, always requested romance novels that made her sigh with remembrance. You remind me of my David, she told Caleb one afternoon. He had the same serious eyes, always carrying the weight of the world. What happened to him? Caleb asked. He built something magnificent, she replied, her gaze distant. But the cost was too high. By the time Caleb collected Zara from a neighbor's apartment and reached home, the sky had darkened. Marina was asleep on the couch, an untouched bowl of soup beside her. The letter from the hospital billing department lay open on the table. $27,489.15 past due. Is Mom going to die? Zara asked suddenly, her voice small in the quiet apartment. The question knocked the breath from Caleb's lungs. No, he said firmly, though the doctors had stopped making promises weeks ago. She's fighting hard. But we're running out of money for her medicine. Zara persisted with the uncomfortable directness of children. I heard Mrs. Diaz talking on the phone. Caleb crouched to her level. Do you remember the story of the stone soup? Zara nodded, her eyes wide. Sometimes, when you have nothing, you have to believe something will come, even if it seems impossible, he said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. That night, after Zara had fallen asleep, Caleb sat at their wobbly kitchen table with flashlight, scanning job listings in the newspaper. Nothing for a 12-year-old. Nothing legal, anyway. The next morning, while delivering newspapers, he passed Crowell Tower. 58 stories of gleaming glass and steel. A janitor was exiting through a side door, and Caleb caught a glimpse of the opulent lobby inside. On impulse, he approached the man. Excuse me, sir. Does Mr. Crowell really work here? The janitor laughed. Top floor. But you'll never see him. Man's practically a ghost. Does he ever hire people? Caleb persisted. Kid, he fires more people before breakfast than you'll meet in a lifetime, the janitor replied. Why? You looking for work? My mom's sick, Caleb said simply. Something in the janitor's expression shifted. Look, I shouldn't do this, but... He reached into his pocket and extracted a crumpled security badge. This won't get you past the main desk, but it'll get you in the building. The rest is up to you. Caleb stared at the badge. Why would you help me? The janitor shrugged. 20 years ago, I was you. He walked away before Caleb could thank him. That night, Marina's condition worsened. The fever returned with vengeful intensity, and her breathing came in ragged gasps. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedic glanced at their sparse living conditions and exchanged a knowing look with his partner. She needs to be admitted, he told Caleb quietly. We can't afford, Caleb began. They have to take her, the paramedic interrupted. It's the law. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Marina's face as she drifted in and out of consciousness. The doctor spoke in hushed tones about aggressive treatment options and financial assistance programs, but Caleb recognized the subtext. They were running out of time and money. When he finally returned home at dawn, Zara was sitting awake in Mrs. Diaz's apartment, clutching her rabbit. Is Mom coming home? She asked. Not today, Caleb answered, his throat tight. But soon. That afternoon, instead of going to retirement home, he sat down with a pencil and the back of a cereal box. At the top, in careful letters, he wrote, Resume, Caleb Adams, age 12. The plan was desperate, perhaps even foolish. But as he listed his meager qualifications and responsibilities, A flicker of determination ignited within him. There was no guarantee Crowell would see him, let alone help. But Marina had always told him that courage wasn't about knowing you would succeed. It was about trying even when success seemed impossible. Dawn broke as Caleb finalized his resume. The cereal box cardboard felt flimsy in his hands. Too informal for a CEO. Mrs. Diaz, noticing his frustration, offered a sheet of her cream-colored stationery. "What is this for?" she asked, dark eyes concerned. "A job," Caleb replied, carefully transferring his information. Mrs. Diaz frowned. "Your school called yesterday. You've missed 8 days this month." Caleb's pencil paused. "Mom needs—" "Your mother needs you to have a future," she interrupted gently. "This isn't your burden alone." But it was. The hospital had called last night. Marina needed specialized treatment unavailable through charity programs. Without it, her chances diminished daily. The next morning, Caleb stood before the bathroom mirror in their apartment, attempting to flatten his cowlick with water. He'd borrowed a button-up shirt from the church donation box. Too large at the collar, sleeves rolled up repeatedly, but it was the best he could manage. "Where are you going?" Zara asked, appearing in the doorway, clutching her rabbit. "To find help," he answered, tucking his resume into a plastic folder to keep it pristine. Zara studied him with eyes too knowing for a 7-year-old. "You look like Dad in that picture Mom keeps." The comparison struck him speechless. Their father had abandoned them 5 years ago, leaving only a fading photograph and a mountain of debt. "I'm not like him," Caleb finally said. "I'm coming back." The bus ride downtown cost $1.75. Money he couldn't spare, but necessary for his plan. As buildings grew taller around him, doubt crept in. What made him think a billionaire would spare even a glance for a kid from the poorest district? The security badge and the janitor suddenly felt like a child's toy, incapable of opening any real doors. Crowell Tower loomed above the surrounding buildings, its mirrored exterior reflecting clouds and sky, as if the structure existed in another realm altogether. Caleb's stomach clenched as he approached the revolving doors, clutching his folder like a shield. "Excuse me," a sharp voice called as he swiped the security badge. "Where's your guardian?" The security guard, a broad-shouldered man with suspicious eyes, blocked his path. "I have an appointment," Caleb lied, his voice cracking. "With whom?" The guard crossed his arms. "Mr. Crowell," Caleb answered, trying to project confidence. The guard's laugh echoed through the marble lobby. "Sure you do, kid. And I'm having lunch with the president. Move along before I call your parents." Heat rushed to Caleb's face as nearby executives glanced his way, some smirking, others averting their eyes. His carefully crafted plan crumbled around him. As he turned to leave, a woman in a charcoal suit approached. "Thomas, what's happening here?" "Nothing, Miss Palmer. Just sending this kid back where he belongs." She studied Caleb, his pressed shirt, the folder clutched to his chest, his determined expression. "Why are you here?" she asked directly. The question hung in the air. Caleb considered lying again, but opted for truth. "My mom is dying. I need to see Mr. Crowell." "And you think he'll help because?" "Because nobody else can." Something shifted in her expression. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. She reached for her badge. "I'm Hannah Palmer, Director of Operations. Come with me." The guard's protest died under her stern glance. Moments later, Caleb stood in an elevator ascending at stomach-dropping speed. Floor numbers blinked past. 10, 20, 30. "Mr. Crowell sees exactly 12 people each month," Miss Palmer explained, eyes forward. "You understand the odds are against you." Caleb nodded. "Thank you for trying anyway." "I'm not doing this from kindness," she replied cryptically. "Let's say I'm curious about what happens when worlds collide." The elevator stopped at floor 47. Not the top floor, Caleb noted with disappointment. "This is where I leave you," Ms. Palmer said. "His office is through that corridor, last door. His assistant will stop you. What happens next depends entirely on how badly you want this." Before Caleb could respond, she was gone, the elevator doors closing on her enigmatic smile. The corridor stretched before him, its walls lined with photographs of Crowell's shaking hands with presidents and princes. Caleb's footsteps echoed on marble as he approached the desk, where a woman with frost-blonde hair typed furiously. "Excuse me," he began. She looked up, startled. "How did you get up here?" "Ms. Palmer brought me." Her eyes narrowed. "Impossible. She's in Tokyo this week." Caleb's blood ran cold. Who had helped him? Before he could process this, an angry voice boomed from an intercom. "Eleanor, get Johnson on the phone now. The merger's falling apart." The assistant, Eleanor, reached for her phone, momentarily distracted. Caleb seized his chance, darting past her desk toward the imposing door with Sebastian Crowell, though engraved on a gold plate. "Stop," Eleanor called, but Caleb had already turned the handle. Inside, Crowell stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, fury radiating from his rigid posture. He turned at the intrusion, eyes widening at the sight of the small boy in an oversized shirt standing in his doorway. "I'll call back," he said into the phone, setting it down slowly. The most powerful moment of Caleb's young life arrived without warning or preparation. All his rehearsed speeches evaporated, leaving only raw truth and desperate hope. Crowell's expression hardened as Eleanor rushed in behind Caleb. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Crowell. I don't know how he—" "It's fine, Eleanor," Crowell interrupted, his voice cold. "Call security." "Please," Caleb said, stepping forward. "Just 1 minute." Crowell studied him with clinical detachment. 30 seconds, then you're escorted out. Eleanor retreated, closing the door with a soft click. Silence filled the vast office, a silence heavy with the weight of two worlds colliding. "My name is Caleb Adams. This is my resume." He extended the folder with trembling fingers. Crowell took it, glancing at the neatly written page inside. Garden work? Newspaper delivery? Crowell's eyebrow arched. "I run a multinational corporation, not a neighborhood charity." Caleb swallowed hard. "I need a job, and I know you don't hire children. Then why waste my time?" The question hung in the air between them, a challenge Caleb had anticipated but still felt unprepared to answer. He took a deep breath and spoke the words he'd rehearsed countless times. "I may be young, but every day I work to save the only family I have, and sometimes that means saving the very hope that keeps us alive." Something flashed across Crowell's face. Recognition, pain, memory. Gone so quickly Caleb might have imagined it. But then the impossible happened. Tears welled in the millionaire's eyes. Crowell turned toward the window, one hand gripping his desk with white knuckles. "Who sent you here?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "Nobody," Caleb replied. "I came on my own." Crowell turned back, studying the boy with renewed interest. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. Caleb obeyed, perching on the edge of the seat, back straight, hands folded in his lap, mimicking poise he'd observed in adults navigating important conversations. "Your mother is sick," Crowell stated rather than asked. Caleb nodded, surprised. "How did you—" "Hospital bills, I assume? Treatment beyond your means." Crowell continued, moving to a cabinet where he poured himself a glass of water. He didn't offer one to Caleb. "Lymphoma," Caleb confirmed. "Stage 3. Crowell froze, the glass halfway to his lips. "Which hospital?" "Mercy General, East Wing." The glass clattered against the desk as Crowell set it down too forcefully. He pressed a button on his phone. "Eleanor, cancel my afternoon." Silence stretched between them again as Crowell seemed to wrestle with something internal, a decision or memory that played across his features in subtle shifts of expression. "Tell me about your mother," he finally said. "Her name is Marina. She was a nurse before she got sick." Caleb hesitated. "She loves sunflowers and terrible rom-coms and singing when she thinks nobody's listening." A muscle twitched in Crowell's jaw. "And your father?" Left 5 years ago, Caleb answered flatly. Crowell nodded as if confirming a theory. You have a sister? Younger, I'm guessing. The question startled Caleb. Zara, she's 7. And who watches her while you're here playing businessman? The condescension stung. Mrs. Diaz, our neighbor. But I'm not playing. My mom needs specialized treatment they don't offer in charity programs. So you thought you'd march into my office and what? Get hired as my personal assistant at age 12. Crowell's tone was cutting. No, sir, Caleb replied, refusing to be intimidated. I thought I'd find someone who could make a difference. Crowell's laugh held no humor. And what made you think I'm that person? Caleb reached into his pocket and withdrew a creased newspaper clipping. He smoothed it on the desk and pushed it toward Crowell. The headline read, Crowell donates wing to Children's Hospital. Below was a photograph of Crowell cutting a ribbon, his smile not reaching his eyes. This was my mother's hospital, Caleb explained. Before she got sick, she said you came every month to visit patients, even though you hated cameras and publicity. Crowell stared at the clipping, his expression unreadable. That was a long time ago. 3 years, Caleb corrected, just before you stopped making public appearances. Something dangerous flashed in Crowell's eyes. You've done your research. Very impressive. Now get out. My mom said you changed after your wife died, Caleb continued, ignoring the dismissal. That you used to care about people, not just profit. The color drained from Crowell's face. He stood abruptly, looming over the desk. You don't know anything about my wife. I know she died of lymphoma, Caleb said quietly. The same type my mom has. The office grew so silent that Caleb could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Crowell sank back into his chair, suddenly looking much older than his years. How could you possibly know that? He whispered. The cancer wing at Mercy General is named after her, Caleb answered. Emma Crowell. Crowell covered his face with his hands. When he finally looked up, the mask of corporate indifference had cracked completely. They told me it was inoperable, he said, his voice raw, that no amount of money could save her. Do you know what that's like? To have billions at your disposal and still be utterly powerless. Every day, Caleb answered simply. Something in the response seemed to cut through Crowell's defenses. He stood and walked to a wall safe hidden behind an abstract painting. From it, he removed a worn photograph, a beautiful woman with laughing eyes, arms wrapped around a younger, smiling Sebastian Crowell. Emma volunteered at Mercy General before we met, he explained, eyes fixed on the image. She said the worst tragedy wasn't dying, but dying without purpose. After she was gone, I built that wing, donated equipment, funded research. His voice trailed off. But I couldn't step foot in another hospital room, not after hers. Caleb remained silent, understanding intuitively that Crowell wasn't really speaking to him anymore. The last thing she asked me to promise was that I would keep helping people, Crowell continued. I built buildings instead. Easier to put your name on concrete than to face human suffering. He returned the photograph to the safe, closing it with a decisive click. Your mother, he said, turning back to Caleb. What's her doctor's name? Dr. Brennan, Caleb answered, hope fluttering cautiously in his chest. Crowell nodded, reaching for his phone. Eleanor, get Dr. Brennan from Mercy General on the line. Then contact the board of the Emma Crowell Research Foundation. I'm reactivating my position. He hung up, meeting Caleb's gaze directly. I can't promise to save your mother, he said, the harshness returning to his voice. Even billionaires lose at battle sometimes. I know, Caleb replied, but we have to try anyway. For the first time, a genuine smile touched Crowell's lips. That sounds like something Emma would say. The phone on Crowell's desk buzzed. Dr. Brennan, on line 1, sir. Crowell took a deep breath before answering. Dr. Brennan, this is Sebastian Crowell. You're treating Marina Adams. Caleb watched as Crowell listened intently, his expression growing increasingly grave. Medical terminology filled the one-sided conversation. Targeted immunotherapies, clinical trial candidates, aggressive progression, each phrase tightening the knot in Caleb's stomach. I understand, Crowell finally said. No, that won't be necessary. We're taking a different approach. He hung up and fixed Caleb with a penetrating stare. Your mother worked in oncology at Mercy General before her diagnosis, correct? Caleb nodded, confused by the question. How did you? Dr. Brennan mentioned it. Crowell interrupted, opening his laptop. What he failed to mention was that she worked directly with Emma during her treatment. She was part of Emma's care team. The revelation struck Caleb speechless. His mother had never mentioned knowing Emma Crowell. She wouldn't have told you, Crowell continued, reading Caleb's expression. Patient confidentiality. But according to Dr. Brennan, your mother was the nurse who stayed with Emma through her final night. His voice caught. When I couldn't, Crowell typed rapidly, then turned the screen toward Caleb. On it was a photograph from a hospital Christmas party 7 years earlier. There stood his mother, younger, healthier, smiling, beside Emma Crowell, both wearing festive scrub caps. Life has a cruel symmetry sometimes, Crowell said quietly. The nurse who comforted my wife now faces the same disease. He closed the laptop decisively. Your mother won't be receiving charity, Caleb. She'll be receiving what she's owed, a debt I should have paid years ago. Within hours, Marina Adams was transferred to a private room in the Emma Crowell Memorial Wing. Caleb and Zara arrived to find their mother surrounded by a team of specialists, her expression bewildered as they explained treatment options previously deemed experimental or cost-prohibitive. I don't understand, Marina said when Caleb entered the room. How is this possible? Before Caleb could answer, Sebastian Crowell himself stepped through the door, causing the medical team to part like a curtain. Recognition dawned in Marina's eyes. Mr. Crowell? Nurse Adams, he replied with formal courtesy. Your son paid me a visit today. Marina turned to Caleb, confusion and fear crossing her face. What did you do? What you taught me to do, Caleb answered, taking her hand. Find hope where there seems to be none. Crowell approached the bed, his corporate mask firmly back in place, though something softer lingered in his eyes. Ms. Adams, I reactivated the Emma Crowell Research Initiative. Your case will be its primary focus. That program was discontinued years ago, Marina said, clearly still processing. After Emma? Yes, Crowell acknowledged. A mistake I'm now rectifying. Within days, Marina began a cutting-edge treatment protocol. The change wasn't immediate. Cancer never surrenders easily, but for the first time in months, possibility replaced resignation in her doctor's voices. The apartment on Westfield Avenue stood empty as Caleb and Zara moved into a furnished condo near the hospital, courtesy of Crowell Holdings. Zara was enrolled in a private school where her artistic talents flourished, while Caleb, though still attending his regular classes, spent afternoons at Crowell Tower, not as an employee, but as something entirely unexpected, an advisor. The Youth Perspective Initiative needs a director, Crowell had announced 1 week after their first meeting. Someone who understands what it means to carry adult responsibilities while navigating childhood. The position was unusual, a 12-year-old advising a multinational corporation on youth outreach programs, but Crowell insisted Caleb's unique experiences made him invaluable. Your resume may have been written on the back of a cereal box, Crowell told him, but its contents were more impressive than Harvard MBAs I've interviewed. The arrangement drew media attention. Child Advisor to Billionaire headlines splashed across business journals, forcing Crowell to hold his first press conference in years. The Emma Crowell Foundation is expanding its mission, he announced to the assembled reporters. We're launching initiatives to support families of patients, particularly children who become caregivers too soon. When asked about Caleb's role, Crowell's response was measured. I don't need another yes man. I need honesty. Sometimes it takes a child to remind adults of what truly matters. Behind the scenes, however, The relationship between Caleb and Crowell evolved beyond professional boundaries. Crowell began appearing at Marina's treatments, sitting silently in the corner while she endured the devastating side effects of medications, fighting to save her life. "Why do you come?" Marina asked him once, her voice weak from nausea. "Because I wasn't brave enough to stay with Emma," he answered simply. "And every day I regret that choice." 8 months later, Marina stood at the podium of the newly established Crowell Family Center for Caregiver Support, her once frail frame now steady, her hair growing back in soft curls. The audience, medical professionals, patients, and families, listened intently as she shared her journey. "Remission isn't guaranteed," she explained, her voice clear despite the lingering fatigue in her eyes. "But hope is a treatment protocol all its own." Seated in the front row, Caleb watched his mother with quiet pride. Beside him, Zara sketched in a notebook detailed illustrations for a children's book they were creating together about navigating a parent's illness. Sebastian Crowell stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, observing not just Marina, but the 100 families whose lives have been transformed through the expanded foundation. What had begun as one billionaire's reluctant re-engagement with humanity had evolved into something neither he nor Caleb could have predicted. The Westfield Avenue neighborhood where the Adams family had once struggled now hosted one of 5 community health centers funded by the Emma Crowell Foundation. Mrs. Diaz managed a volunteer program, while Mr. Garcia's convenience store thrived as a nutrition center for patients undergoing treatment. "The board meeting starts in 30 minutes, Eleanor reminded Crowell as Marina concluded her speech. "They can wait," he replied, watching as Caleb approached the podium to join his mother. The boy who had once stood trembling in his office now carried himself with quiet confidence. Still a child, but forever chained by circumstances that would have broken many adults. Later that evening, as they walked to the memorial garden outside the cancer center, Crowell asked Caleb a question that had lingered for months. "Did you know your mother treated Emma when you came to my office that day?" Caleb shook his head. "I only knew about the cancer wing named after your wife. Mom never talked about her patients." Crowell nodded, unsurprised. Some would call it coincidence. "And you?" "I stopped believing in coincidence the day a 12-year-old reminded me of a promise I made to my dying wife." They paused before a bench inscribed with Emma's name. Beside it now stood a smaller plaque that read, "Hope doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It comes in the courage of those who refuse to surrender, even when all evidence suggests they should." "Your words," Crowell acknowledged, "from your first presentation to the board." As the setting sun painted the garden in amber light, Caleb understood that some journeys begin not with maps or plans, but with a single sentence spoken from the heart. Words powerful enough to penetrate even the most carefully guarded walls. What would you do if someone you loved needed you to be braver than you've ever been? Have you ever seen a child show more courage than the adults around them? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to Soul Thread Stories by T for more powerful narratives that remind us what truly matters in life. Remember to turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly uploads. What sentence would you use if you had just one chance to change someone's life? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, this is T, reminding you that sometimes the most powerful words are the ones we speak when everything is at stake.